Mr. Sergeant of Arms, invite the members into the chamber and close the doors. I hereby declare the House of Representatives of the 113th General Assembly of the State of Tennessee now in session. Leader Lambert, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move to dispense with the calling of the roll.
Without objection, so ordered. Let the journal reflect Representative Davis and Warner are excused. Call next bill, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, at the time of recess, the body was ready for further consideration of item 38, Senate Bill 429 by Representative Reagan relative to local governments.
Chairman Reagan, at your desk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to roll this to the heel of the calendar.
Without objection, roll to the hill. Call next bill, Mr. Clerk.
That brings the body back to item 17. Item 17, House Bill 776 by Chairman Haynes relative to development of retail and other public tourism facilities. Mr. Speaker, Senate bills on the desk.
Chairlady Hilton Haynes, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 0316.
Chairlady Hilton Haynes moves to substitute and conform Senate Bill 316, probably seconded without objection. So ordered. Chairlady Hilton Haynes, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 0316 on third and final consideration.
Chairlady Hilton Haynes moves passage of Senate Bill 316 on third and final consideration. Probably second. Mr. Clerk, call First Amendment.
House Local Government Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Crawford, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to adopt and refer to the sponsor for further explanation.
Chairman Crawford moves adoption of committee amendment number 1, probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of adopting amendment number 1 say aye, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopt it. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairlady Hilton Haynes, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment is a cleanup and introduces several changes related to economic development projects within specific districts, border region, and regional retail. This bill only applies to Bristol, Kingsport, Eastridge, and Johnson City. All the stakeholders agree with this amendment. There's no risk to the state or taxpayers. And Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Chairlady Hilton Haynes renews her motion. Any discussion on the bill? Chairman Crawford, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move previous question.
Previous question been called. Is there objection? Seeing none, we're voting. All those in favor of Senate Bill 316 as amended vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 90, no nays.
Senate Bill 316 having received constitutional majority. Everybody declare passed without objection. Motion reconsider table. Call next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2326 by Chairman Hicks of Hawkins relative to education.
Chairman Hicks, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 2326 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Hicks moves passage. Following second. Mr. Clerk, call First Amendment.
House Education Administration Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman White, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to roll Amendment 1 to the hill.
Without objection, amendment number 1 to the hill. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
House Education Administration Committee Amendment number 2.
Chairman White, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to adopt.
Chairman White moves adoption of committee amendment number 2. Probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of adopting amendment number 2 say aye, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopt the next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, that brings us back to House Amendment number 1, Education Administration Amendment.
Chairman White, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Hicks, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, House Bill 2326. This is the Alternative Pathways to Fifth Grade bill for those fourth graders who do not show adequate growth in fourth grade. So those students that do not show adequate growth on the TCAP, but do show adequate growth on local benchmarks, this would allow them to move on to fifth grade. So let's say that a student does not show adequate growth on TCAP, does not show adequate growth on those benchmarks. At that point, there would be a conference that's called, and that conference would include the parent, guardian, the teacher, the principal, to determine whether or not that child needs to be retained or whether or not that child needs to move forward. If the child is promoted to fourth grade using the alternative pathway, they will have access to the interventions with additional supports. And with that, I renew my motion.
Chairman Hicks renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative McKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, sponsor, for bringing this bill. This makes sense. That this is a great bill, and it gives the people who are informed, who care, the access, and really the strength and the power that they need to manage their kids. So thank you for bringing this piece of legislation.
Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Speaker. Sponsor, on the I'll call it a conference committee, the parent, the ELA, and the principal,
who carries the weight there? If the parent insists, is the student going to the fifth grade with interventions?
Chairman Hicks.
Representative Hardaway, that would actually, so when this conference is called, so you will have input from, obviously from all the stakeholders, but at the end, the option would always be available for the parent to decide, let my child move on with the interventions. Those interventions being tutoring or even summer school. So at the end of the day, this puts it in the parent's decision.
Representative Hardaway.
That's what I wanted to hear, parental choice. Thank you, Speaker. Thank you, sponsor.
Any further discussion? Chairman Crawford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move previous question.
Previous question been called. Any objection? Seeing none, we're voting. All those in favor of House Bill 2326 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, is any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 90, no nays.
House Bill 2326 having received constitutional majority, everybody clerk pass without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2487 by Chairman Hurt, relative to threats of mass violence made by a student. Mr. Speaker, Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman Hurt, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2931.
Chairman Hurt moves to substitute and conform Senate Bill 2931 without objection. So ordered. Representative Hurt, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 2931 on third and final consideration.
Representative Hurt moves passage of Senate Bill 2931 on third and final consideration. Probably second. Mr. Clerk, call First Amendment.
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Representative Hurt, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Senate Bill 2931 deals with threats of mass violence policy. Right now, school superintendent has the flexibility to make a case-by-case modification to violations of the zero tolerance policy. Senate Bill 2931 allows directors to use resources to get more information regarding the expulsion. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Representative Hurt renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Wright, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move previous question.
Previous question been called. Is there objection? Seeing none, we're voting. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2931, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, so any member wish to change their vote? Camper, aye. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 91, no nays.
Senate Bill 2931 having received constitutional majority, everybody clerk pass without objection. Most reconsider is tabled. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2486 by Chairman Hurt, relative to directors of schools. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Representative Hurt, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2932.
Representative Hurt moves to substitute and conform Senate Bill 2932. Probably second without objection. So ordered. Representative Hurt, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 2932 on third and final consideration.
Representative Hurt moves passage of Senate Bill 2932 on third and final consideration. Probably second. Mr. Clerk, call First Amendment.
House Education Administration Committee Amendment number 1, same as Senate Amendment number 1.
Chairman White, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Same as the Senate amendment, so I move to withdraw.
Without objection, Amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Hurt, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Senate Bill 2932 will allow a director of schools to delegate specific duties to another administrator or employee of an LEA. The only duties the director can delegate are those that the Board of Education has authorized and adopted in the board policy. It also allows a local Board of Education to determine the requirements for the position of a director of schools beyond the only requirement of a baccalaureate degree. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Representative Hurt renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none, we're voting. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2932, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Martin, aye. Ms. Clerk, take the vote.
Ayes 93, no nays.
Senate Bill 2932 having received constitutional majority, hereby clerk pass without objection. Most reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2264 by Representative Hakeem, relative to school improvement. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Representative Keem, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2366.
Representative Keem moves to substitute and conform Senate Bill 2366 without objection. So ordered. Representative Keem.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 2366 on third and final consideration.
Representative King moves passage of Senate Bill 2366 on third and final consideration. By second, Mr. Clerk, call First Amendment.
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Representative King, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What this bill does is authorize certain schools in need of intervention to exit the Department of Education school turnaround pilot program before the 24-25 school year. Requires a school that exits the pilot program before the 24-25 school year to compensate the independent school turnaround expert under contract for all services provided up until the DOE and expert are notified that the school is exiting the pilot program. We're doing this in coordination with the senator from our area, Senator Watson, and the school superintendent. With that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Representative King renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move previous question.
Previous question been called. Is there objection? Seeing none, we're voting. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2366 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clark, please take the vote.
72, 13 nays, 4 present, I voted.
Senate Bill 2366 having received constitutional majority, everybody clerk pass without objection. Most reconsider table. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2508 by Representative Harris, relative to non-compliance with child support obligations. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Representative Harris, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2774.
Representative Harris moves to substitute and form Senate Bill 2774 without objection. So ordered. Representative Harris, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 2774 on third and final consideration.
Representative Harris moves passage of Senate Bill 2774 on third and final consideration. By second, Mr. Clerk, call First Amendment.
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Representative Harris, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And House Bill 2508 is the CDL license and child support bill. And it says that if the Department of Safety is provided in writing or electronically with confirmation that an individual with a CDL has completed and complied with all 4 requirements, they may be able to obtain an active CDL or renew their current CDL. They must meet 4 qualifications. The position the individual is employed with requires a CDL. The employer can provide that they expect the average payroll to the individual will reasonably bring the individual into compliance with their child support order. The employer agrees to allow garnishment from child support from the individual's payroll. And the only reason the CDL cannot be unsuspended or renewed is solely because of the child's child support order and nothing else. Upon receiving confirmation of these reasonable compliance positions, the Department of Safety shall withdraw the suspension or revocation of the individual's commercial driver's license. And with that, I renew my motion.
Representative Harris renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Any objection? Nope. We're voting. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2774 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 77, 15 nays.
Senate Bill 2774 received constitutional majority. Everybody clerk pass without objection. Most reconsider table. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2839 by Representative Towns and others, relative to personal property, execution, seizure, or attachment. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Representative Towns, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 1814.
Representative Towns moves to substitute and form Senate Bill 1814 without objection. So ordered. Representative Towns.
Mr. Speaker, there again, I move passage on Senate Bill 1814 on third and final consideration.
Representative Towns moves passage of Senate Bill 1814 on third and final consideration. By second, Ms. Clerk, call First Amendment.
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Representative Towns, you're recognized.
Mr. Speaker, members, what Senate Bill 1814 simply does, expand. What it does not do is expand and add any exemptions to the already found in the law. Rather, it clarifies the existing exemption for the state and the private and private qualified retirement plans. Senate Bill 1814 is consistent with the legislative history for the purpose of the Tennessee Attorney General, who states that in enacted TCA 26-2-105, the legislature intended to protect private retirement plans to benefit and encourage people who are saving money for their retirement. And I renew my motion.
Representative Towns renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Powell.
Move previous question.
Previous question been called. Is there objection? Seeing none, we're voting. All those in favor of Senate Bill 1814 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 92, no nays.
Senate Bill 1814 on received constitutional majority. Everybody declare passed. Without objection, motion reconsider table. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 628 by Representative Leatherwood relative to health care. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Representative Leatherwood, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move substitute and conform Senate Bill 0734.
Representative Leatherwood moves substitute form Senate Bill 734. Properly second without objection. So ordered. Representative Leatherwood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 0734 on third and final consideration.
Representative Leatherwood moves passage of Senate Bill 734 on third and final consideration. Properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call the First Amendment.
House Health Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Hawk, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment rewrites the bill. Move to adopt and defer to the sponsor for further explanation.
Chairman Hawk moves adoption. Committee Amendment number 1. Properly seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of adopting Committee Amendment number 1 say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopt it. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendment.
Representative Leatherwood, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill establishes the Tennessee Wellness Act and enacts protections for physicians and ICOPaths seeking to help to address career fatigue and workplace burnout. And with that, I renew my motion.
Representative Leatherwood renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Pearson.
Thank you, Speaker and sponsor for the legislation. I just want to shout out the University of Tennessee Health Science Center came to our office and talked about the need to make sure that our physicians and those who are serving our community in so many ways actually get lifted up. And I know so many advocates are here and watching this as well. And so doing all that we can for physicians to be able to serve our communities is just really important. So appreciate that portion of this legislation. Thank you, Speaker.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none, we're voting. All those in favor of Senate Bill 734 as amended vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 93, 1 nay.
Senate Bill 734 received constitutional majority. I hereby declare it passed without objection. Motion reconsider table. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2644 by Representative Leatherwood relative to children.
Representative Leatherwood, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 2644 on third and final consideration.
Representative Leatherwood moves passage. 5 seconds. Mr. Clerk, call First Amendment.
House Civil Justice Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Farmer, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment rewrites the bill. Move to adopt and defer to the sponsor for further explanation.
Chairman Farmer moves adoption Committee Amendment number 1. 5 seconds. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of adopting Committee Amendment number 1 say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Leatherwood, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill is supported by the Tennessee Bar Association, their adoption section. It has some technical and cleanup changes to assist in child placement, and it eliminates some of the open-ended timeframes by adding some timelines to the adoption process. With that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Representative Leatherwood renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none, we're voting. All those in favor of House Bill 2644 as amended vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 75, 17 nays, 1 present, not voted.
House Bill 2644 received constitutional majority. Everybody clerk passed without objection. Motion reconsider table. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2645 by Representative Leatherwood relative to birth certificates. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Representative Leatherwood, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2632.
Representative Leatherwood moves substitute and conform Senate Bill 2632. Probably second without objection. So ordered. Representative Leatherwood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 2632 on third and final consideration.
Representative Leatherwood moves passage of Senate Bill 2632 on third and final consideration. Properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, any amendments been filed?
Mr. Speaker, Health Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman Hawk, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment rewrites the bill, and I'm going to move to adopt and defer to the sponsor for explanation.
Chairman Hawk moves adoption of committee amendment number 1, probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of adopting committee amendment number 1, say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Leatherwood, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 2645 is an effort by, again, the Tennessee Bar Association, the adoption section, working with the Tennessee Office of Vital Records to speed up the process for issuing a new birth certificate when a child is adopted. With that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Representative Leatherwood renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2632 as amended, vote aye. When the bell rings, those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Speak aye. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 91, no nays, 1 present, not voting.
Senate Bill 2632 has received constitutional majority. I declare it passed without objection. Motion to reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2076 by Martin of Carroll, relative to payment for health care. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Representative Martin, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to SB 2328.
Representative Martin moves substitute and form Senate Bill 2328, probably second without objection. So ordered. Representative Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of SB 2328 on third and final consideration.
Representative Martin moves passage of Senate Bill 2328 on third and final consideration, properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, first amendment.
House Insurance Committee Amendment number 1, same as Senate Amendment number 1.
Chairman Kumar, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is the same as the Senate amendment. Move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Martin, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've been working alongside the Tennessee Medical Association and insurance industry since last summer on this piece of legislation. It involves recoupment, which is where insurance companies are able to come back on providers and take money back. It hasn't been addressed in 20 years in statute, and here we are to change it. There's 5 simple portions of it. Most importantly, it's taking it from 18 months down to 15 months. Insurance companies can go back 30 days, as well as you cannot recoup during the appeal process. With that, I renew my motion.
Representative Martin renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Kaplan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move previous question.
Previous question been called. Is there objection? Seeing none, we're voting. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2328, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change the vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 93, no nays, 1 present, not voting.
Senate Bill 2328 and received constitutional majority. Everybody declare passed by objection. Motion to reconsider is tabled. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2200 by Representative McCalman, relative to alcoholic beverages. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Representative McCalman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I humbly move that we roll this bill to the next available spot, the next available calendar.
Without objection, roll to the next available spot on the next available calendar. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2613 by Representative McCalman and others, relative to alcoholic beverages. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Representative McCalman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2506.
Representative McCalman moves substitute and form Senate Bill 2506, probably second without objection. So ordered. Representative McCalman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 2506 on third and final consideration.
Representative McCalman moves passage of Senate Bill 2506 on third and final consideration, probably second. Ms. Clerk, call First Amendment.
House State Government Committee Amendment number 1, same as Senate Amendment number 1.
Chairman Keisling, you are recognized.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment is the same as the Senate amendment, so we move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
House Finance Ways and Means Committee Amendment Number 1, filed as House Amendment 2, same as Senate Amendment 2.
Chair Lady Hazelwood, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Same as the Senate amendment. Move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 2 withdrawn. Call up next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative McCalmon, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, what this bill does is it creates a new, more restrictive liquor by the drink license applicable only to barbershops, cosmetology salons, and cigar bars. It puts a cap on the establishment's gross revenue at 15%. So in essence, only 15% of their total revenue can come from alcohol sales. It reduces the hours from 8 a.m. to 3 a.m., from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. Still requires food sales, and it reduces the 40-seat requirement to 20-seat requirement. Worked hand in hand with the ABC. They actually wrote this bill for us. This came from a constituent in the great town of Nolensville, and with that, I renew my motion and stand ready for questions.
Representative McCalmon renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You roll me one space.
I don't think you want to go there. Representative Parkinson. There's more people than that representative on the list.
Move previous question.
Previous question been called. Whoa. That's right. Previous question been called. Any objection to the question? There's only 2 objections. We're voting. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2506, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 58, 31 nays, 3 present, not voting.
Senate Bill 2506, having received constitutional majority, everybody declare passed without objection. Most reconsider table. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1831 by Representative Raper relative to student retention. Mr. Speaker, Senate bill is on the desk.
Representative Raper, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 1688.
Representative Raper moves substitute and conform Senate Bill 1688, probably second without objection. So ordered. Representative Raper, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to the passage of Senate Bill 1688 on third and final consideration.
Representative Raper moves passage of Senate Bill 1688 on third and final consideration, probably second. Mr. Clerk, call First Amendment.
House Education Administration Committee Amendment Number 1, same as Senate Amendment Number 1.
Chairman White, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Same as Senate amendment, so I move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Raper, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the same vein of Representative Hicks' bill to empower parents, the amended bill, which we worked on with the Board of Education, expands a parent's rights to retain their child in kindergarten through second if, and this is Ann's statement, the students have a documented academic or behavioral delay and the parent guardian believes the retention may benefit the student. The amendment also includes a request from the Department of Education to add clarifying language that the bill does not supersede the school's obligation to comply with any federal or state laws to students with disabilities and English language learners. This is consistent with our moves to empower families and ultimately respect the input of parents. And that you are correct. Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Representative Raper renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Leader Camper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative, with respect to this bill, if a parent chooses to hold their child back, will there be any type of wraparound services, any type of assistance that they can get for tutoring or summer school? Summer school, tutoring, will they get those type of services, or are they just holding their child back? Does this bill address that?
Representative Raper.
It does not address that. It's only it's just only a holdback, but obviously there should be intervention services that we have already passed beforehand.
Leader Camper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Are there provisions in the bill that would allow them to seek some support from the school in making their decision to hold a child back?
Representative Raper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And yes, when we passed the ELA bill last year, it had those provisions in there, and nothing would change as far as that is concerned.
Leader Camper.
If you think that holding a child back would interfere or have concerns around their Disability Act and things like that, is there provisions that protects the family from making that decision? And will they be notified of this before they make that decision?
Representative Raper.
Yes, ma'am. And there is a provision there that we will not violate any law as far as the American Disabilities Act. No federal or state law will be violated. And yes, they will be notified as far as that's concerned. Yes, ma'am.
Leader Camper, you're good. Representative Johnson and Knox.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One of my concerns is with kids that you talked about with behavioral issues or, sometimes just social skills, that sort of thing. Parents want their student held back. A lot of times parents don't really understand that the importance of being with same age peers in order to keep those skills on level with their same age peers, and that holding them back can sometimes also stunt them learning those behaviors as their age-appropriate peers. So is there going to be a situation where there's a conversation with parents by an expert about, how it's so important to be with age-appropriate peers for a lot of these things?
Representative Raper.
Yes, ma'am. There will, anytime that retention will be going on, then there'll be a group and a team in place that will be giving, and it'll be part of the M team actually, that will be giving advice as far as that's concerned, their concerns, the benefits and so on. But ultimately, this bill just gives the parents prerogative. If they disagree with the M team's decision, they can overrule that.
Representative Johnson.
I guess it's a little concerning, but thank you.
Representative Raper. All right, Representative Grills.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If a parent chooses to hold their child back for 1 year, at the end of the school year, will that school or that LEA be held accountable, or will that hurt their evaluation at the end of the school year?
Representative Raper.
That's not in my bill, and I don't have that answer. I really don't know that answer, just to tell you the truth.
Representative Grills. Representative Raper.
Chairman White just informed me that it will not.
Representative Grills.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for answering.
Representative Lynn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, my husband and I actually chose to do this with one of our children. They went to a private Christian school, and it was a great decision. And we're happy that we did it. And actually, our child thanked us a couple of years later for making the decision. So I think this is a great bill, and thank you for bringing it.
Representative Travis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move previous question.
Previous question been called. Is there objection? Seeing none, we're voting. All those in favor of Senate Bill 1688, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 84, 8 nays.
Senate Bill 1688, having received constitutional majority, hereby declare passed by objection. Most read series table. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1899 by Chairman Rudd and others relative to school safety.
Chairman Rudd, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I make passage of HB 1899 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Rudd moves passage by second. Mr. Clerk, any amendments been filed?
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Chairman Rudd, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is the SRO Expansion Act. We passed this last year, but the Senate did not take it up. And what this would do, we currently have 500 schools across the state, a little over 500, that cannot find enough deputies and SROs to guard our children. Right now, they're unguarded in these schools, especially rural areas and some suburban areas. This would expand this with severe limitations and good quality training to retired police officers and honorably discharged veterans. They would have to do 40 hours of post-training. They would also have to be evaluated by a psychologist and a mental health professional. and they'd undergo a background check by the TBI and the FBI before they could be hired by the LEA. It is both the intent of this bill, and what this bill does is with this training and these qualifications, they could be opened up to the SRO grant program. Also, whether they carried a firearm or not in school would be up to the local sheriff. And with that, I renew my motion, Mr. Speaker.
Chairman Rudd renews the motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Sapicki, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Chairman Rudd, I really appreciate you bringing this bill to provide another level of security for our schools. I think it's great that we have all this testing, all these evaluations of these people, the requirements to be certified, and then lastly, making sure the head law enforcement agent in that area can determine whether or not they're going to go ahead and let them carry into school. This is another level of protection for our schools, and I'm going to support your bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Chairman Rudd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman Sapicki. Again, right now, without this bill, over 500 schools have no protection because they can't find enough commissioned officers and deputies to fill these positions.
Representative McKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And, as we discussed in committee, I get the need, but sometimes I don't know if this is going to adequately meet our need. And by that, I mean, as you and I, and we all know, and several of our members that are in the military has a myriad of jobs that people would do for a career and are discharged honorably, but their job might not have been in line with being an SRO. Their job may have been a chef. The job may have been a driver. The job may have been the person that jumps out of a parachuter, but that doesn't uniquely qualify them to work with our K through 12 children. So my concern with this bill is when we say ex-military, there's like a blanket that says, okay, they're good to go. And that may or may not be the case. And there's nothing wrong with them mentally. They've not broken any laws, but they're not adequately qualified to guard our youth, to be able to discern between a potential threat and just someone venting, be it parent, be it high schooler. So that's really my concern with this bill, in that our law enforcement officers, they're taught how to deal with the public. They're taught how to interact with youth, with the elderly, with anyone that can come into that building, and anyone can come into our buildings at any time. So that's my concern with this bill. Again, we've talked about it, and I agree there is a need, but I don't know if this bill will put the right people in our classrooms. To me, I don't know if I don't know what the answer is. Is it choosing the wrong person or having that slot go empty until we can get the right person in? So I'd be interested in how you would respond to that, and thank you.
Chairman Rudd.
I feel very comfortable with our veterans. They have military training, they have weapons and tactics training, they have crisis training, they have military discipline. They are a perfect choice to add as a backup to both our police officers as well as the school system. This bill is also permissive, and it leaves open for the school system to add additional qualifications that they want to hire. Unlike SROs, the regular SROs under current law, they are employed by the local law enforcement. These would be employed by the school system, and they could impose more restrictions when they hire them. We have purposely left the schools so that they can add to this. This requires minimal training so they have access to the grant program, but outside of that, the schools can go beyond what we require.
Representative McKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think everybody realizes that most of their interactions are not going to be with a gunman or a threat from the outside. Most of their interactions are going to be from a teacher asking them to come to a classroom to deal with an unruly 9-year-old. That's going to be most of their job. I have a 12-year-old that's having a bad day that's acting out. So again, these militaristic type, that they were needed to defend our borders, to defend our country, to work hard, to jump out of helicopters, to go to war. That's what they were trained to do. They weren't trained on how to deal with an unruly 7-year-old. That's most of their calls. That's most of what our SRO officers are doing today. So again, this is a fit that doesn't work for our K through 12 schools and our K through 12 students. So I just ask you to consider that as you throw that military. I get retired officers. I get that. They're good. They're trained. They have 30 years, 40 years at it. But the folks just getting out of military, unless they were somehow MP officers. Thank you.
Chairman Rudd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't know about you, but I feel very confident that our military is trained. They're able to fight on foreign shores and both domestically. They are most certainly trained better than anyone else off the street that just happens to walk in. We are not hiring guidance counselors, even though SROs have to do a lot. We're hiring SROs, police officers and veterans, to protect the lives of our children that may be at risk, whether that be internal to the school or external. These threats are real. We've all witnessed it here and around the country, and we need a trained person who knows combat and tactics to protect our children. Right now, they're vulnerable and they have no protection in over 500 schools. This won't protect all 500 schools, but it will open it up. Not every community has dishonorably discharged veterans or retired police officers living in their counties. But for those that do, this will add another layer of protection and an option, another tool in the toolbox, as they say. And with that, I renew my motion.
Representative McCalman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move previous question.
Previous question called. There's objection. We're voting on previous question. All those in favor of previous question vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Aye, 70, 22 nays.
Previous question prevails. We're voting. All those in favor of House Bill 1899 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Aye, 69, 21 nays.
House Bill 1899 having received constitutional majority, everybody declare passed by objection. Most read serious table. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2665 by Representative Slater relative to juveniles. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill's on the desk.
Representative Slater, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2507.
Representative Slater moves substitute and conform Senate Bill 2507, probably second without objection. So ordered. Representative Slater.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 2507 on third and final consideration.
Representative Slater moves passage of Senate Bill 2507 on third and final consideration. Probably second. Mr. Clerk, call First Amendment.
House Civil Justice Committee Amendment number 1, similar to Senate Amendment number 1.
Chairman Farmer, you're recognized.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Slater, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill codifies and therefore mandates phone calls and family visits with children admitted to juvenile detention prior to adjudication for a delinquent act. Currently, phone calls and family visits fall under DCS policy. I renew my motion.
Representative Slater renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none, we're voting. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2507, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Clemens, aye. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 93, no nays.
Senate Bill 2507 having received constitutional majority, everybody declare passed without objection. The most read serious table. Representative Hemmer, for what purpose?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just want to let the membership know a hangry legislator is not a happy legislator. They got some pizza in the clerk's office.
Call next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2088 by Chairman Whitson and others relative to armed forces personnel. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman Whitson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2081.
Chairman Whitson moves to substitute and conform Senate Bill 2081 without objection. So ordered. Chairman Whitson.
Come right here for me. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 2081 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Whitson moves passage of Senate Bill 2081 on third and final consideration. Bobby second. Mr. Clerk, call First Amendment.
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Chairman Whitson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill supports our Army National Guard, and I'm proud to say that Representative Fritz here served in the Army National Guard in the 278th Armored Cavalry Regiment in combat, and also was a member of the regular Army. And thank you for standing up here with me today on this bill. This bill is the Critical Skills Retention Bonus Program and Contingency Operation Guard Pay. What it does, it allows the National Guard to establish a board to help recruit and retain those National Guard members in critical combat skills that we need, like water purification specialists or those individuals who repair our air traffic control equipment. The other part of the bill allows those state employees who are deployed to support combat operations or are called to active duty by the federal government. If their pay is less as a Guard member to what they were making the state will make up the difference so they don't suffer a financial hardship. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Chairman Whitson renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Leader Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. All right, now, we've asked this question a couple different times in committee, and you've been very hopeful of a better future for other pieces of legislation. But honestly, Representative Whitson, is this going to be your last bill on the floor?
I don't want to know. Chairman Whitson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's look after Finance Ways and Means today is looking like the last bill I'll have on the floor.
Leader Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and never could I find it a more fitting tribute, sir, to your service here in the great state of Tennessee for you to go out carrying a bill that deals with honoring our men and women in uniform. Thank you very much for the service you've given our country. Thank you for the service you've given our state, sir.
Leader Camper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Representative Whitson, for this bill. And thank you for your service. You know, when you first came, we were on Veterans Caucus together, and we looked at a lot of issues that affected veterans in this state. And you've championed those bills, and we appreciate it. You call me friend, I call you friend. You are a person that, if I'm in a foxhole and need some help, I want you in that foxhole with me. The respect I have for you is tremendous. And the loyalty you have to our military, our National Guard, Air National Guard is commendable. And I really appreciate that. And I really appreciate calling you friend. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your service, not only in the military, Colonel, but also in this body. We really appreciate you.
Chairman Whitson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Leader Lambert, I appreciate you signing this bill to me. It's greatly appreciated. And I'd just like to say to Chief Warrant Officer Karen Camper, a United States Army retired, when I was a lieutenant, I was scared to death of warrant officers and because they were tough, and you're tough. And Karen, I appreciate your friendship, and I appreciate those kind words.
Chairman Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Chairman Whitson, I have it on really reliable authority that a Democrat, Representative Darren Jernigan, taught you everything you need to know around this House. Is that correct?
Chairman Whitson. Chairman Whitson.
I don't know what to say other than that. I will just tell you, his taste in movies is pretty bad. Okay.
Chairman Clemens.
I have spent a lot of time with Sam, and I can tell you when it comes to his military record and things he does talk about, want to talk about. But one thing, if you want to thank a service member, be the kind of American worth fighting for. that's what we need to take away from. And sir, I'm so glad that you were part of our military all these years and keeping all of us safe. So.
Mr. Speaker, I would just like to add, on behalf of, to make this bipartisan and following in my leader's statements, on behalf of the entire Democratic caucus, thank you for your service to this country and to the state of Tennessee. Congratulations on your retirement, sir.
Chairman Whitson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and Leader Clemens. I appreciate that. And again, Darren, I learned so much from you, from your our friendship. Everybody knows it's really close. You're a great man and a good friend. And I tell you, I look at everybody up here. I call y'all friends, and I am so blessed. And I've said this before. I miss the Army, but I tell you, I rediscovered a sense of purpose and camaraderie I've not felt since I served on active duty with soldiers overseas, stateside. Y'all represent the best of Tennessee, and I have so many dear friends. I will miss y'all. Next February, I'm going to be on a cruise in the Caribbean Ocean, and I'll send you pictures. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chairman Clemens.
Previous question.
Mr. Speaker, I move previous question.
Oh, Camp, you already talked. We got to retract. We got some more on here. Maybe somebody will do it. Representative Mitchell.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll tell you, I am so glad that I have got to know you, Sam Whitson. This Tennessee General Assembly would be so much better if you had a whole lot more people like Sam Whitson in this General Assembly. Probably a whole lot less like me and a whole lot less like others on the other side. You are a treasure to the state. We appreciate your service to this country. We appreciate your service to this state. And God knows we'll miss you in this chamber. Thank you so much for your service, sir.
Representative Chisholm.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If I can, I'd like to make a motion that all voting in affirmative be added as co-prime sponsors.
It's a proper motion, probably seconded without objection. Disclosure is duly noted. Representative Fritz.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and to Representative. It's been an honor to get to serve alongside you, and you're just so pleasant under all conditions, something we all should model. And I just want to say congratulations with a language you and I and a few others in this room understand.
Chairman Crawford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll move previous question.
Previous question been called. Is there objection? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2081, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 95, no nays.
Senate Bill 2081 and received constitutional majority. Everybody declare passed by objection. Motion to reconsider is tabled. Go on next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1825 by Chairman Farmer relative to immediate methamphetamine precursor. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman Farmer, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2048.
Chairman Farmer moves substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2048, probably second without objection. So ordered. Chairman Farmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to pass the Senate Bill 2048, 30 and third and final consideration.
Chairman Farmer moves passage of Senate Bill 2048 on third and final consideration. Properly second. Mr. Clerk, call First Amendment.
House Criminal Justice Committee Amendment number 1, same as Senate Amendment number 1.
Chairman Olsey, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Same as Senate Amendment number 1. Move to withdraw.
Without objection, Amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Farmer, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, what this bill does, for those of you with allergies, we're going to be able to buy more Sudafed in our pharmacies. Currently, we have a 5.6 gram per month limit. This is going to up that to 7. What that means is you're going to be able to buy 2 full boxes. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Chairman Farmer renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative McCalman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and sponsor. On behalf of everybody who suffers from acute sinusitis, I would like to say thank you for sponsoring this bill. You are doing me and many, many, many other Tennesseans a great favor. So thank you.
Representative Marsh, you're recognized. Speaker Pro Tem Marsh.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. Move previous question.
Previous question been called. Is there objection? Seeing none, we're voting. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2048, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 94, no nays.
Senate Bill 2048, having received a constitutional majority, hereby declare passed without objection. Most reconsider table. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2001 by Chairman Farmer relative to healthcare liability actions. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman Farmer, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2253.
Chairman Farmer moves to substitute and conform Senate Bill 2253, probably seconded without objection. So ordered. Chairman Farmer, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 2253 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Farmer moves passage of Senate Bill 2253 on third and final consideration, properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
House Civil Justice Committee Amendment Number 1, same as Senate Amendment Number 1.
Chairman Russell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move to withdraw.
Without objection, Amendment Number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Farmer, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, what this bill does, it abolishes the collateral source doctrine in healthcare liability actions only. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Chairman Farmer renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Chairman Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Sponsor, could you please explain for the members what the collateral source rule is?
Chairman Farmer.
And thank you, Mr. Speaker. Be happy to do that. Members, currently, how the healthcare liability actions have been litigated and how damages have been determined historically was based on what the defendant has paid with regards to their medical bills and not what has been billed. As we all know, there's a big difference in what people pay and what they're billed. So in cases like, say, car accidents, the jury can make a determination and the plaintiff can show the jurors what has been billed, and they can make that determination on those cases with regards to damages off of that. Historically, for the past 40 years, healthcare liability cases have been, you've only been able to produce and show jurors the amounts that have been paid. There was a Supreme Court case just this past September where our Supreme Court said, we're going to treat these cases, healthcare liability cases, just as we're going to treat car accident cases, and ask for some clarification. So what I'm attempting to do here, and I hope I'm doing, is putting this law back to where it was pre-Crotty, the Crotty decision. So with that explanation, I hope I didn't confuse everybody too bad, but we're just trying to keep in line and allow these cases, healthcare liability actions only, to be litigated and determined how they were before and have been for the last 3 decades.
Chairman Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So the difference between what is billed and what is paid is it can be substantial sometimes, and some of that reflects offsets by insurance companies and so forth. And so by limiting this to what is paid versus what is billed, we're limiting the actual economic losses that are recoverable by the plaintiff in healthcare liability cases, right?
Chairman Farmer.
And that is correct, Representative Clemens. That historically has been the way these cases have been litigated, and the courts have made their rulings over time in case law, right up until the Supreme Court said, hey, look, we're going to change things. We need more clarification. So in all fairness, the hope was that the healthcare liability cases continue to be litigated the way they've been litigated over the past 30 or 40 years, and allow car accident cases and other cases like that to be litigated and determined the way they've been determined over the past 2 or 3 decades. So
Chairman
trying to keep the status quo.
Chairman Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. But one of the issues is that healthcare liability is governed differently than car wreck cases in several aspects. I mean, we can't, this is kind of apples to oranges with regards to liability. And whatever those actual economic losses are supposed to reflect the actual cost or what would be incurred otherwise by the individual with regards to billing, whether it reflects inflated billing or what have you. That's for another conversation. But I just want to make sure we're not necessarily directly comparing car wreck cases to healthcare liability cases, because those are very different types of litigation and very different burdens of proof and very different kind of circumstances. So I appreciate you answering my questions. I just want to make that point.
Chairman Farmer.
And Mr. Speaker, and to your comment, my point and my attempt was to show that this has nothing to do or is not intended to affect any way car accident cases are litigated. And you're correct. This is apples to oranges. Just want to make that distinction. Thank you.
Chairman Clemens, we good? All right. Representative Hardaway.
Thank you. And I think I left too early. Did I hear you say it does not affect car accident cases?
Chairman Farmer.
You are correct.
Representative Hardaway.
Thank you.
Representative Littleton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Call for previous question.
Previous question being called. Is there objection? Seeing none, we are voting. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2253 vote aye. When the bell rings, those opposed vote no. As every member voted, as any member wishes to change their vote. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Aye, 72, 19 nays, 3 present, not voting.
Senate Bill 2253, I'm received Constitutional majority. Everybody clerk pass by objection. Most to reconsider table. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2244 by Chairman Farmer relative to local governments.
Chairman Farmer, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 2244 in third and final consideration.
Chairman Farmer moves passage. Probably second. Mr. Clerk, call it First Amendment.
House Local Government Committee Amendment Number 1.
Chairman Crawford, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to adopt and defer to the sponsor for further explanation.
Chairman Crawford moves adoption of Committee Amendment Number 1. Probably second. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of Committee Amendment Number 1 say aye, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendment.
Chairman Farmer, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, what this bill does, it would allow for a local government that has a TDZ within their municipality to make a determination on how their local assessment is collected and distributed. Right now, there's a project, developers want to come in and make about a $500 million investment in the city of Sevierville. This would allow the city of Sevierville to allocate their local assessment by a 2/3 vote, a local vote, to those developers. So this has nothing to do with state dollars. These are all locals dollars that stay local. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Chairman Farmer needs his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Love.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just for clarity, is this just for Sevierville?
Chairman Farmer.
Well, there's the way this would work if you had, there's certain, let's say, for example, this would have to be, if you had a TDZ and you had a development that had 150 room full service hotel with a $500 million investment, this would also, you could take advantage of this as well. It just need to be under the same parameters as this bill is. So say, for example, I believe like Graceland, for example, when they went into Memphis there, that if someone wanted to do a project like that, they did something very similar to this to have that project arrive there. So this could potentially apply to anyone else with a TDZ if they met the qualifications and the covenants in this bill.
Representative Love. Representative Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move previous question.
Previous question has been called. Is there objection? There's objection. We're voting. All those in favor of previous question vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, is any member wish to change their vote? Powers aye. Bonds and aye. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Aye, 77, 16 nays.
Previous question prevails. We are voting. All those in favor of House Bill 2244 as amended vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, is any member wish to change your vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 90, no nays, 3 present, not voting.
House Bill 2244, received constitutional majority. I declare passed by objection. Most reconsider table. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2348 by Chairman Reagan relative to the support of terrorist organizations. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman Reagan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2610.
Chairman Reagan moves substitute and conform Senate Bill 2610. Probably second without objection. So ordered. Chairman Reagan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 2610 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Reagan moves passage of Senate Bill 2610 on third and final consideration. Probably second. Mr. Clerk, call it First Amendment.
House Criminal Justice Committee Amendment Number 1.
Chairman Halsey, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move to withdraw in favor of Senate Amendment 1.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Reagan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, terrorists have been enabled by technology to extend their activity even into our own communities. After the 10/7 attack in Israel, Hamas supporters in our own country called for violence and genocide. They also solicited some material support for the execution of those goals. Taxpayer-funded universities became hotbeds for anti-Israel and anti-American rallies and publications. It is an insult to our taxpayers if we allow their tax dollars to support those who hate them. This bill prohibits tax-funded universities and colleges from furnishing meeting spaces or media platforms to designated terrorist activities by the State Department. And to clarify, it does not violate any First Amendment rights that apply to citizens exercising free speech. It targets groups that have been found by a court of competent jurisdiction, and then this was tightened by the Senate version as terrorist organizations. An entity which violates this statute will be punished with up to a $3,000 fine per count. Passing this bill makes our college campuses safer and will reduce the proliferation of violent rhetoric on all sides. With that explanation, I renew my motion.
Chairman Reagan renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Pearson.
Thank you, Speaker. And sponsor, I'm deeply concerned about terrorism, particularly domestic terrorism, as it relates to the growth of white supremacist domestic terrorists in our state and across our country that is fueling divisiveness and hate on college campuses and universities across our state. Actually, just recently, we had a racist, white supremacist, domestic terrorist murderer, Kyle Rittenhouse, at the University of Memphis, which was very shocking and appalling to so many in our community that it was even possible that he would be allowed to speak at the university. Would a person supporting an organization like that be prohibited under this legislation from being able to use our public universities to continue sort of their reign of terror on our communities?
Chairman Reagan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Anyone adjudicated by a court of competent jurisdiction as a terrorist would not be allowed.
Representative Pearson.
Thank you, Speaker. So the only terrorists that are being recognized are those who have been deemed terrorists in a court of competent jurisdiction. So other organizations that may not fit that bill would not, even though they have terrorist ideologies, principles, actions that they commit. Am I understanding that correctly?
Chairman Reagan.
No, sir, you're in error. The State Department list of terrorist organizations is included in this bill.
Representative Pearson.
Thank you so much, Speaker. I appreciate that, and I'll be sure to go through that list because I think it needs to be exhaustive. And I know the State Department, so many other entities are looking at the growing threat that we have of white nationalism and white supremacist organizations in our state that are harmful, that are disastrous to the fabric of our institutions, and that will, if they are continuing unabated, to destroy this constitutional democratic Republican experiment that we have. I hope that the State Department is listing these organizations from the Proud Boys to so many others that are continuing to perpetuate ideologies that are harmful and that are hateful in our communities. I don't know, sponsor, if the organization that brought Kyle Rittenhouse, who is again a white supremacist, a domestic terrorist, and a murderer, if he would still be allowed to come to the University of Memphis. I think the scope of the bill might in fact be a little too small. And so I think that's something that I would want for us to look at, and maybe in next legislative session, ensure that we're looking at the Southern Poverty Law Center. We're looking at a lot of other organizations and entities that are moving forward and pushing forward these hateful ideologies, because it's one thing for folks to be adjudicated in a court of competent jurisdiction, which I can appreciate that. It's another thing for the State Department to say, here's our list. But I think we need to be very expansive, because whether it be the attacks happening on Jewish folks or Muslim folk, Black folk, Mexican people, immigrants in our country, like we got a whole lot of hate that is being propagated by several institutions and organizations in our state and across this country that are fueling domestic terrorism, that are fueling hate-filled ideologies and rhetoric that is only seeking to destroy our communities and continuing to destroy our state. And so I want to make sure that when we think about this legislation and who's being given the opportunity to come to our universities, to come to our schools, that they are not allowed in any way to be able to be propagating hate. And so while this might be a start, when you think about the list, there are so many hate-filled organizations and entities that are pushing these ideologies that cause division, that cause separation, that try to have folks think that they are less than other people, that we need to do all that we can to make sure none of these organizations or institutions are allowed on our campuses, because the campuses should be places for thought, should be places for community building, should be places where people are learning. That's what we should be promoting as a legislative body. And so what I would encourage my colleagues to think about is, how do we make sure this list is as exhaustive as possible so that we can stop white supremacists and domestic terrorists and bigoted people from using taxpayer dollars and resources at our public universities to continue to move their hate-filled ideologies forward using our taxpayer money. And so that's what I would want us to think about as we continue to stop the hate and stop the divisiveness and stop the white supremacy. Thank you, Speaker.
Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Speaker. To the sponsor, this list is not exhaustive. It's not capped. If, for instance, the FBI watch list, if you were on that terrorist watch list, then we assume that the government facility still could exercise discretion and keep from providing resources to that organization or individual.
Chairman Reagan.
And that's a question.
Chairman Reagan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And sir, you are incorrect. The FBI list that you referred to has not been adjudicated by a court. So this bill directs that any terrorist organization or group that has been adjudicated by a court of competent jurisdiction as a terrorist group is so affected by this legislation.
Representative Hardaway.
All right, so being on the FBI's terrorist watch list would not fall under your bill?
Chairman Reagan.
Unless those groups have been adjudicated by a court as a terrorist organization, the answer is no, sir.
Representative Hardaway.
Would it preclude the facility management from banning that individual or group?
Chairman Reagan.
This bill does not address that, sir. That's a First Amendment issue.
Representative Hardaway.
So they would, the discretion still exists with the facility.
Chairman Reagan.
If the facility is not violating the First Amendment, they may comply with whatever other laws they see fit, sir.
Representative Hardaway.
All right. I'm disappointed because if you're on the FBI watch list and you aid a terrorist to carry out an act of terror, then you've broken the law. So I'm disappointed. I thought that we had that discussion, and somehow in my mind, I thought that you had told me that those individuals or organizations would be included under your bill.
Jim Reagan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The answer straightforwardly is any organization adjudicated by a court. The courts are there to protect our First Amendment rights, even those we disagree with. So the terror watch list the FBI has, if it applies to the same list the State Department has for foreign terrorist organizations, then it would apply. If it doesn't have on that list and a court has not so adjudicated, that FBI watch list does not apply in this situation, sir.
Representative Hardaway.
Okay, I could give examples of individuals who may be scheming, organizations that might be scheming to carry out terroristic attacks. But but it wouldn't change if you say they're not included under your bill, and they have to be adjudicated by a court, then I won't bother going down that road. But the other thing, if you could kind of help me understand, when you say adjudicated by a court, what that means.
Chairman Reagan.
I'm sorry, sir. I did not hear that.
Representative Hardaway.
When you say adjudicated by a court, does it mean that the court has said specifically that this is a terrorist organization or a terrorist? And does it mean that they would have had to have been convicted of such an act? Is that what you reference for adjudication by a court?
Chairman Reagan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My understanding is that the court ruling is an adjudication, so the court would have to rule them to be that in that category, sir.
Representative Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sponsor, you've carefully crafted this so it says the State Department adjudicated, so it would be state-sponsored terrorism against the United States, not domestic terrorism, so you can easily exclude the Proud Boys, the Klan, all the people that, you should put in your legislation, but you have very craftily worded it so you can exclude these racist organizations within the United States. And I feel sorry for you. I truly do. If you would bring legislation like this, this is multiple times tonight, you've removed all doubt. And it gets old. And we're all tired of it. So with that being said, I'm going to sit down, but both sides of the aisle are very tired.
Representative Bain.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just had a quick question for you, Chairman Reagan. So from 2017 to 2022, the New Century Foundation, which has been deemed a white supremacist organization, held its annual American Renaissance event in Montgomery Bell State Park. And during that time, you were a state legislator, and you've never brought forth a piece of legislation like this. So I'm trying to understand what the catalyst was when you all have allowed domestic terrorist groups to hold events on state property historically.
Chairman Reagan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill does not address that. It addresses groups that a court of competent jurisdiction has found to be terrorist groups. If the groups to which you refer have in fact been judged by a court to be in that category, this bill would apply. Otherwise, it does not.
Representative Bain.
I just think in this moment, passing this bill, you all as a Republican supermajority are weaponizing your power and privilege to criminalize groups that you don't agree with. No? I think it has to go both ways. I think this bill is overreaching, it's extreme, and it's unconstitutional. Thank you.
Chairman Reagan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In fact, the wording on this bill was selected in conjunction and with the help of some members of the Attorney General's office. The groups that you referred to, such as Segunda Marquita, the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, the ISIS DRC, the ISIS Mozambique, Harat Sawat, Assad al-Haq, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, Jamaat, and I could go on and on. I have 2 typewritten pages of groups that the State Department has declared to be terrorist groups. This bill is aimed at those and those who are gathering support for them, both material and recruiting. This bill is aimed at those who are running around our campuses, yelling death to America and recruiting funds to send to foreign terrorist groups.
Representative Gant.
Move previous question.
Previous question been called. Is there objection? There's objection. We're voting on previous question. All those in favor of previous question vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Aye, 69, 21 nays.
Previous question fails. We're voting. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2016 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Aye, 69, 22 nays.
Senate Bill 2016 having received a constitutional majority, everybody declare passed by objection. Motion reconsider is tabled. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, that brings the body back to item 7, House Bill 2269 by Chairman Boyd, relative to Health Facilities Commission.
Chairman Boyd, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 2269 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Boyd moves passage. Probably second. Mr. Clerk, call it first amendment.
House Health Committee Amendment number 1.
Vice Chairman Leatherwood, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment rewrites the bill and move to roll it to the hill.
Without objection, roll to the hill. Call the next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
House Amendment 2 by Representative Leatherwood. Mr. Speaker, it was timely filed.
Vice Chairman Leatherwood, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Amendment number 2 is a technical correction to renumber the sections. I move to adopt and defer to the sponsor for further explanation.
Vice Chairman Leatherwood moves adoption of amendment number 2, probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment will be on the board on this one. All those in favor of adopting amendment number 2, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 89, no nays, 1 present, not voting.
Amendment number 2 is adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, that brings us back to the Hill House Health Committee Amendment number 1.
Vice Chairman Leatherwood, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Boyd, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, the 7 years that I've been in the General Assembly, one of the most hotly debated topics and discussed in health committees was the certificate of need and the potential and capacity for repealing or peeling back layers of it. And so in 2019, a bicameral working group was formed to study what has happened in other states, what unintended consequences were, what it would look like. We listened to all the different stakeholder groups in the state of Tennessee. We heard from publicly owned hospitals, investor-owned hospitals, ambulatory surgical centers, think tanks, anybody that had an opinion on this. And the working group finally put together a working group report, which is available, and you guys may have seen it. If not, I can get you a copy of it. But this piece of legislation is ultimately the culmination of that working group report. Now, there have been a few changes as we've negotiated with the different stakeholder groups to get something that was palatable to all parties. But essentially, that's what this bill is. So let me start at the top. One of the things that we learned when we were putting this together is that in states that have done full repeal, they determined that there were 5 categories that essentially had to stay under certificate of need permanently, and we decided to include that in our legislation as well. And that is rehabilitation hospitals, home health agencies, hospice, methadone clinics, and nursing homes. And then the rest of the bill, I will kind of walk you through phase by phase what will happen. And so phase 1 would happen July the 1st of 2025. And on July the 1st of 25, if someone wanted to put a freestanding emergency room in, they could do that anywhere in any of the counties in Tennessee, so long as that they stayed within 35 miles of the host hospital as required by CMS. But if they want to do it without using CON, they would have to respect a 10-mile boundary from any competing hospital or competing freestanding emergency room. At that same deadline, July the 1st of 25, we would also categorize any county in the state of Tennessee that does not have a licensed acute care hospital. That would basically become a non-CON county. And at that point, everything with the exception of the first 5 things that I mentioned, rehabilitation hospitals, home health agencies, hospice, methadone, and nursing homes. Other than that, every category comes out from under CON in that those non-CON counties. The next phase would be December the 1st of 2025. At that time, burn units, neonatal intensive care, ICF, IID, PET, and MRI would come out from under certificate of need. Then the next phase would be December the 1st of 2027. Ambulatory surgical centers would come out from under CON, linear accelerators, and long-term care hospitals. And then the final phase would be in December the 1st of 2029, and open heart surgery would come out from under CON. Now, the categories that will remain under CON, not necessarily permanently, but they're not contemplated in this bill, are cardiac cath, ODCs, which are outpatient diagnostic centers, acute care hospitals, and organ transplant. And any of the services that come out from under CON would be moved over to a more robust licensing program than probably what we have seen up to this point. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Chairman Boyd renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Bain.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I really appreciate your efforts. I know the committee went a long way, and they have spent a lot of time and energy into developing this piece of legislation. And I also know that CON full repeal, partial repeals are taking place all across the country. But I just wanted to highlight that I think this was a missed opportunity to tailor this piece of legislation to address rural health disparities. I want to acknowledge that the Rural Health Association of Tennessee has not endorsed this piece of legislation. It was also not recommended by the Rural Health Task Force that the governor put together. And so my question for you, just for the record, Representative Boyd, is why wasn't Medicaid expansion included in this, as North Carolina did in 2022? They did a full repeal of their CON and also included Medicaid expansion. Thank you.
Chairman Boyd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The working group, we did not contemplate any sort of Medicaid expansion. Medicaid expansion. The purpose of the working group and the purpose of this bill is to start the ball rolling on a rollback and ultimate repeal of certificate of need in this state.
Representative Bain.
I think rural healthcare facilities and a lot of rural communities across the state believe that the CON process is the only thing that is providing them some autonomy and agency in what their healthcare facility landscape looks like. And I think they would, is there a reason why it wasn't even considered as a support for rural hospitals across the state?
Chairman Boyd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, because I didn't want to. And you can always file a bill next year if you'd like to do that.
Representative Bain.
Okay, thank you so much.
Representative Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sponsor, I had a question. At one point, I think during the process, Madison County had an exemption in this. Is that still in this version of the bill?
Chairman Boyd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At one point, one of the earlier versions of the bill, we did have 100,000 population carve out. So if you had less than 100,000, you would stay under CON. We contemplated that and determined that most of those counties, what we were trying to protect was their acute care hospitals. And so we just once the Senate took it through a few committees and started amending out acute care hospitals, we just amended it out in our version as well. So it was really no longer needed at that point. So we took the population threshold out, but acute care hospitals are not affected by this in any of the counties, even the big cities.
Representative Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for that effort. I applaud you for taking that cap exemption out. And I hear from my constituents all the time about how the monopolies created under CON are bad for the community. They see it day in and day out. They see how the care and what is provided goes down. There's always a number of problems with that. And so I appreciate you bringing this and kind of getting this effort taken care of once and for all, I believe. And I respect the committee and the research that's gone behind this to know which exact things need to stay in CON. I was a little surprised by that, but I certainly respect that and the research that led to that decision. But thank you for the efforts to get this done finally.
Chairman Boyd.
Thank you.
Representative Martin.
Mr. Speaker, I move the previous question.
Previous question been called. There's objection. We're on the board. All those in favor of previous question vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Barrett, aye. Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Ayes 72, 20 nays.
Previous question prevails. We're voting. All those in favor of House Bill 2269 as amended vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 76, 12 nay, 4 present, unvoted.
House Bill 2269 received constitutional majority. Everybody clerk pass by objection. Most read series table. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1059 with Chairman Vaughn relative to higher education. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman Vaughn, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute conform to Senate Bill 0709.
Chairman Vaughn moves substitute conform Senate Bill 709, probably seconded without objection. So ordered. Chairman Vaughn, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I now move passage of 709 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Vaughn moves passage of Senate Bill 709 on third and final consideration. Probably seconded. Mr. Clerk, call First Amendment.
House Education Administration Committee Amendment Number 1, same as Senate Amendment Number 1.
Chairman White, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Same as the Senate amendment, so I move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendment.
Chairman Vaughn, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm about to renew my motion, but prior to that, I will give a little explanation of the bill. As amended, this bill updates Tennessee's current name, image, and likeness law to ensure their institutions remain nimble and competitive given their ever-changing landscape throughout college athletics. This bill levels the NIL playing field for Tennessee while keeping our state a leader in how we protect and provide for opportunities for our student athletes. This bill also supports our Attorney General as well as the Eastern District Courts of Tennessee's assertion that certain NCAA actions harm our student athletes. It does a number of things that we've seen develop. Again, this is a fast-moving field that we're in, but for us to make sure that the same rules of capitalism and free market affects athletes, whether or not they have signed to play NCAA sports, shouldn't be impeded. And that's what we're trying to do here. And I think this keeps us on the forefront of the movement that we've got. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I now renew my motion.
Chairman Vaughn renews the motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Gillespie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I called the previous question.
Previous question been called. Is there objection? There's objection. We're on the board. All those in favor of previous question vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 72, 16 nays, 1 present, not voting.
Previous question prevails. We're voting. All those in favor of Senate Bill 709 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member casts their vote, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 86, 1 nay, 6 present, not voting.
Senate Bill 709 having received constitutional majority. Everybody clerk pass by objection. Most read series table. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2093 by Chairman Vaughn relative to brief and orphan.
Chairman Vaughn, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 2093 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Vaughn moves passage. Probably second. Mr. Clerk, call up first bill.
House Health Committee Amendment Number 1.
Vice Chairman Leatherwood, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment rewrites the bill. I move to adopt and defer to the sponsor for further explanation.
Vice Chairman Leatherwood moves adoption. Committee amendment number 1, probably second. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of committee amendment number 1 say aye, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Vaughn, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As amended, House Bill 2093 will update our OBOT statute to allow a highly qualified licensed OBOT who have attained accreditation by the Commission of Accreditation on Rehabilitation Facilities International or the Joint Commission to expand capacity to treat more patients. This bill would allow nurse practitioners and physician's assistants inside these accredited OBOTs to treat up to 250 patients. It sets an aggregate cap of 500 patients per facility. With that, sir, I renew my motion.
Chairman Vaughn renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Leader Camper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative, what type of supervision will the nurse practitioners be under with respect to a doctor in the prescribing of the medication?
Chairman Vaughn, you recognize.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you for that question, Leader. It goes to mid-level providers for every physician. So one physician supervises or collaborates with two mid-levels. So each mid-level is 250 and each physician up to 500. And that's the same level that we set earlier with Representative Hicks' bill with FHQMAs, I believe is FQHCs and then CMHCs.
Leader Camper. Very good. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Bill 2093 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As they remember, vote as they may wish to change their vote. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 89, 2 days, 2 present, not voting.
House Bill 2093 and received constitutional majority. Hereby clerk passed without objection. Most read series table. Next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2097 by Chairman Vaughn relative to advisory opinions. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman Vaughn, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute conform to Senate Bill 2588.
Chairman Vaughn moves substitute form Senate Bill 2588. Properly second without objection. So ordered. Chairman Vaughn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 2588 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Vaughn moves passage of Senate Bill 2588 on third and final consideration. Properly second. Ms. Clerk, call First Amendment.
House State Government Committee Amendment Number 1, same as Senate Amendment Number 1.
Chairman Keesling, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Amendment 1 is the same as the Senate amendment. We move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
House State Government Committee Amendment Number 2.
Chairman Keesling, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're going to defer to Chairman Vaughn for further explanation on Amendment 2. We move to adopt.
Chairman Keesling moves adoption. Committee amendment number 2. Probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of committee amendment number 2 say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Vaughn, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill as presented requires regulatory boards to issue written opinions at the request of licensees. It's been going on in the health fields for a while. We are moving it over to those boards that are under commerce and insurance. And with that, sir, I renew my motion.
Chairman Vaughn renews his motion. Any discussion? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2588 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 92, no nays.
Senate Bill 2588 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The most read series table. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2868 by Chairman Vaughn relative to tax revenue.
Chairman Vaughn, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 2868 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Vaughn moves passage. Probably second. Mr. Clerk, call it First Amendment.
House Local Government Committee Amendment Number 1.
Chairman Crawford, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to adopt and defer to the sponsor for further explanation.
Chairman Crawford moves adoption. Committee amendment number 1. Probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of committee amendment number 1 say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Vaughn, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And first, let me say on behalf of Shelby County, thank you to this body for allocating money last year in the budget for the renovation of some facilities down there. This piece that we're bringing to you tonight finalizes the financing mechanisms for the renovations of the FedEx Forum. It was brought about by cooperation from the Shelby County Commission, the Memphis City Council, the City of Memphis Mayor, as well as the Shelby County, Memphis and Shelby County Convention and Visitors Bureau, as well as our good friends, Chairman Dale Carr and Chairman John Crawford for working through this. We got a lot of people at the table and worked it out. And with that, I think it's one of those cases where everyone pulling in the right direction was able to bring this thing home. And so with that, we would certainly ask for your support to get those facilities renovated. With that, sir, I renew my motion.
Chairman Vaughn renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Call for the previous question.
Previous question been called. Is there objection? Seeing none, we're voting. All those in favor of House Bill 2868 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change the vote? Ms. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 90, no nays, one present not voting.
House Bill 2680, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare it passed without objection. Most read serious table. Leader Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We still have a committee to meet this evening, and with that, I would make a motion, or I move that the remainder of today's calendar be moved to the next available calendar, next available space. Nope, hang on. Hold up.
Leader Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After conferring with the minority leader and the clerk, I move that we take up the remainder of this calendar tomorrow. The same calendar, the exact same calendar, this calendar.
Without objection. So ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Unfinished business.
I'm sorry, we got back up once. Hang on.
Mr. Speaker, we have a message calendar.
Call it first message, Mr. Clerk.
House Joint Resolution 801 by Representative McCalman. Mr. Speaker, on April 11, 2024, the Senate adopted Amendment 1 and passed House Joint Resolution 801 as amended.
Representative McCalman, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, what the Senate version of this resolution did, it modified some of the language, but for all intents and purposes, it is the same resolution. And with that, I move to concur in Senate Amendment number 1.
Representative McCalman moves to concur in Senate Amendment number 1. Probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Representative Spicky.
Move previous question.
Previous question been called. There's objection. We're on the board. All those in favor of previous question vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 70, 21 nays.
Previous question for bills. We're voting. All those in favor of adopting Senate Amendment number 1 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 69, 22 nays.
Senate Amendment number 1 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare concurred in. Without objection, most read serious table. Next message, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, that completes the message calendar.
Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, earlier today, we distributed a House Consent Calendar number 2. House Consent Calendar 2, it's available in the electronic system.
Chairman Zachary, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have passage of House Consent Calendar 2 on third and final consideration, in keeping with Rule 50.
Gentlemen, moves passage of the consent calendar consent calendar number 2 properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, any objections been filed?
Mr. Speaker, no objections filed.
Anyone seeking recognition on consent calendar number 2? Seeing none, we're voting. All those in favor of consent calendar number 2 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Whitson, aye. Clemens and aye. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 88, 1 nay, 2 present, not voting.
Having received constitutional majority, I declare consent calendar passed without objection. Most read serious table. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Unfinished business.
Unfinished business. Leader Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know I'm out of order, but a very special thing happened in Portland, Tennessee this evening. My little girl, Allison, became the sentinel as a freshman of her FFA club. So y'all give her a hand, please.
Representative Pearson.
Thank you, Speaker. I may have lost this in the previous session here, but what is the status now of HB 747?
Representative, we're under unfinished business. That's not unfinished business. That's not under unfinished business. You can come up to the clerk's office and ask up here, but that's not unfinished business. Any further unfinished business? Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Announcements.
Announcements. Chairman Zachary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, can I have your attention, please? Calendar and rules will meet immediately following the floor session. We will have 2 calendars. We'll have a budget calendar, and then you should have been emailed a regular calendar that has 18 bills. So if you have a bill up in calendar and rules, please be there immediately following session. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you.
House hearing room 1. Thank you,
Chairman
Mr. Speaker.
Hicks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, Budget Sub will meet in the morning at 9:30 in House Hearing Room 1 to take up our calendars.
Chairman Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this is National Work Zone Week in Tennessee and across the nation. So far this year, we've had 29 incidents where drivers have crashed into TDOT equipment and road builder equipment and put our road workers in danger. So we're asking you to spread the word, National Work Zone Week. And if you'd like to, tomorrow you can wear orange, which is the color of the barrels that they use in the work zone, and also support the Vols. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Any further announcements? Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Roll call.
Roll call. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Mr. Speaker, 89 members present.
Next order, Mr. Clerk.
That completes the regular order, Mr. Speaker.
Leader Cochran, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the House stand in recess until 4 p.m. on Wednesday, April 17th, 2024.
Without objection, the House stands recessed till 4 p.m. on Wednesday, April 27th, 2024.